For as long as people have called this place home, they've been welcomed with clean air, clean water, and an abundance of nature. As time went on, people saw the need to balance how we build cities with how we protect farms and forests. That's why across Greater Portland, in 24 cities and 3 counties, there's one metro government that brings us all together to maintain that vital balance, to provide services across cities and counties, to create a better future together. Hello, we're Metro. We plan for housing, jobs, and safe transportation. We protect land, air, and water by managing garbage and recycling. We support arts and culture by overseeing local venues to keep the economy growing. And we connect people to nature across 17,000 acres of parks and trails and at the Oregon Zoo. Metro is all of us working together, connecting how we live today with how we plan for the future. Hello, we're Metro, and so are you.
Good morning, everyone. We have a quorum, and I'm calling the Metro Council Business Meeting to order for May 11th, 2023. Connor, will you please call the roll for attendance?
Yes, thank you, President Peterson. Councillor Simpson.
Present.
Councillor Nolan will be joining us shortly. She's running just a little late. Councillor Rosenthal.
Present.
Councillor Gonzalez.
Good morning. Present.
Good morning. Councillor Lewis.
Present.
Councillor Wong.
Present.
And President Peterson.
Here. Thank you. Before we begin our agenda items, can we please play the safety video for our in-person attendees?
Hi, I'm John Rourke. I'm the head carpenter here at the Newmark Theater. Safety is a big part of my job. Some of the things we consider here at the Newmark Theater are the safety of our crews, the safety of the cast, the safety of the audience. I'm out here at the Newmark Theater. You're at Metro Regional Center. The council chamber is located on the 3rd floor of the building. In event of fire or a fire alarm, please exit through the door in the northeast corner of the room, go down the steps to the 2nd floor, and then exit through the main entrance by the reception desk and gather in the courtyard outside that entrance. In the event of a medical or fire emergency, please call 911 and notify a security agent at the front desk. The nearest defibrillator is mounted on the steps leading from the reception desk down to Grand Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you. For those tuning in, we will have an opportunity for public comment on resolution number 23-5320, our solid waste fees, later in our agenda. Right now, our public comment will be after our staff presentation, but before we vote on the resolution. However, now I will open up the public communication on non-agenda items. Connor, will you please describe to the audience our procedures for the public communication portion of the meeting?
Yes, thank you, President Peterson. So if anyone wishes to testify on non-agenda items, now is the time to do so. Public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes, and I will manage a timer to go off at that 3-minute mark. If you've not already signed up to speak, you can do so now. If you're joining us in person, you can sign up to speak by filling out one of the blue cards in the back of the room and bringing that up to me. If you're joining us on Zoom, you can sign up by hitting that raise hand button. The raise hand button, depending on your version of Zoom, is either at the bottom of your screen or within the reactions tab. For those testifying on Zoom today, I'll call your name. You'll see a window pop up asking you to accept a promotion to a panelist. Once you accept that promotion, you'll be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera. And as a reminder to everybody testifying today, you do not need to give your physical address. However, please do identify yourself for the record before testifying. So with that, councilors, once again, folks, this is for any testimony on non-agenda items. Councilors, we haven't had anybody sign up in advance to speak on non-agenda items. We did have some written testimony that was submitted and distributed to you all yesterday. And with that, President Peterson, I don't see any hands up either in our virtual or physical audience. Oh, and you're on mute, President Peterson.
Of course I am. Thank you, Connor. With that, I will close the public communication portion of the meeting on non-agenda items and move on to our consent agenda. Today's consent agenda now consists of one item for the purpose of amending the 2021-24 MTIP to add 3 new projects to the MTIP, allowing them to initiate preliminary engineering and meet future federal delivery requirements. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Counselor
Adoption.
Been
Madam
moved by
President, I
Counselor-
move adoption.
Counselor Gonzalez, I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Counselor Nolan and seconded by Counselor Gonzalez. Counselors, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those
Aye.
opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you so much. We'll move on to our resolutions. The first is for the purpose of approving the fiscal year 2023-24 budget, setting property tax levies and transmitting the approved budget to the Multnomah County Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission. Counselors, I want to remind us and the members of the public that this is not our final opportunity to amend the budget. Today's action today's action continues our conversation by transmitting our budget to the Tax Supervising Coordinating Committee. We are excited to host them and the Metro Council chambers for the June 1st budget hearing with them. Following that hearing, we'll have additional deliberations and can still make changes before a final vote to adopt the budget on June 22nd. In our council meeting on Tuesday, we heard about 2 staff recommended budget amendments. In our capacity as the budget committee today, we will deliberate on those proposed amendments before our consideration of moving the budget forward to the TSCC. These budget amendments are not a package and we will deliberate on them individually. So first we have Amendment 1. Increase the appropriations of the General Obligation Debt Service Fund by $3,500,750 and increase the General Obligation Debt Service Tax Levy by $3,704,498. Councilors, please note the 2 components of Amendment 1 are related and must be adopted together. Today we have Brian Kennedy, our Chief Financial Officer, here to answer any questions and give any kind of remarks. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Council President Peterson, members of the council. My name is Brian Kennedy.
Could you press the...
Thank you, Council President Peterson, members of the council. My name is Brian Kennedy. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Chief Financial Officer. I don't have any additional presentation on the budget amendment, but I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Councilors, are there any questions? Seeing no hands raised, I will move myself to include the Amendment 1 in fiscal year 2023-24 approved budget. And do I have a second to that motion?
Counselor Gonzalez will second.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Gonzalez. Councilors, any further discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, Connor, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Counselor Lewis.
Aye.
Counselor Nolan.
Yes.
Counselor Wong.
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal.
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Counselor Simpson.
Aye.
And President Peterson.
Aye, the motion passes. Thank you very much. We'll move on to our second amendment, a transfer of $295,000 from the general fund contingency to the chief operating officer's budget to fund an additional scope related to the Portland Expo Future Phase 2 project. Today we have our chief operating officer, Marisa Madrigal, here to answer any questions. Councilors, any questions before we move forward? Oh, Councilor Rosenthal.
Yeah, just one question. I always wonder when something comes out at such an odd number of 295,000, not 250 or 300, and is there a particular reason why it ended up at a specific number? I mean, I know we need more money, and we underestimated how much is going to be necessary for doing the scoping, but I just, was this a recommendation? Just a curiosity.
I'm happy to answer that, Councilor Rosenthal. Hello, councilors. Marisa Madrigal, Chief Operating Officer. These are our best estimates. Once we go through the process of doing an RFP and retaining consultants and external experts, we'll have more precise numbers. So our estimates just totaled to that amount.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing no additional questions, I will move to include Amendment 2 in the fiscal year 2023-24 approved budget. Do I have a second?
Second, Counselor Rosenthal, seconds.
Thank you, Councilor Rosenthal. Thank you for seconding. With that, any further discussion? Seeing no hands raised, Connor, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Counselor Wong.
Aye.
Counselor Simpson.
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal.
Aye.
Counselor Nolan.
Yes.
Counselor Lewis.
Aye.
And President Peterson.
Aye, the motion passes. Thank you so much, everybody. Now we will move on to our other budget deliberations. We will have a short presentation from our Chief Financial Officer, Brian Kennedy, who will go over a few key items before we move to our other budget deliberations. Brian.
Thank you, Council President Peterson. If you could pull the presentation up. Next slide, please. So the presentation today will be a short reminder of where we're at in the budget process, a brief description of the resolution before you, and the next steps. Next slide, please. So today we are at the final stage where the council is acting on the budget as the budget committee. With your approval today, the budget will be transmitted to the Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission, and all future deliberations will be in your role as the Metro Council as the governing body. And as Council President Peterson mentioned, the Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission hearing is on June 1st. Next slide, please. So Resolution 23-5321 takes a couple of specific actions. So first, it approves the fiscal year 2023-24 budget. It sets the property tax levies, so our permanent rate, our local option levy, and our debt service levy rate, debt service levy amount, excuse me, and it transmits the budget to the TSCC. Next slide, please. So the budget summary before you, you'll notice is, so the increases from the proposed to the approved stage are approximately $3.5 million, representing the first decision you made on the budget amendment to authorize the refunding. The change for the additional funding for the Expo project doesn't actually change the budget summary. It just transfers appropriation from contingency to the council COO's office budget for appropriation. There is no change in FTE from the proposed to the approved stage. Next slide, please. This shows the detail of the property tax levy. There are two changes here. So the first line, the general obligation refunding the 2023 series, that's an increased amount over what you saw for the proposed budget. And again, this would allow us to execute the proposed refunding of a portion of our 2012 bonds. And then the change in our debt service rate, estimated debt service rate, from 39 cents per thousand of assessed value to 40 cents per thousand of assessed value. Next slide. So the upcoming dates, the TSCC hearing on June 1st. On June 15th, the council will have additional opportunity to consider amendments to the budget, and that's the final opportunity to amend the approved budget prior to adoption on June 22nd. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Councilors, are there any other questions on the proposed budget at this time? Seeing no hands raised, I will move us to our vote on our resolution approving the fiscal year 2023-24 budget. Do I have a motion on the fiscal year 2023-24 budget?
Councilor Gonzalez, move approval.
Thank you.
Second, Counselor Rosenthal.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilor Gonzalez and seconded by Councilor Rosenthal. Any further discussion, councilors? Seeing none, Connor, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Counselor Nolan.
Yes.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Counselor Lewis.
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal.
Aye.
Counselor Wong.
Aye.
Counselor Simpson.
Aye.
And President Peterson.
Aye, the motion passes. Thank you. I want to take a moment and just thank our COO, Marisa Madrigal, and our CFO, Brian Kennedy, and everybody else who worked as a team to get this to this point. There are a lot of folks involved, and it's much appreciated. I think a lot of what the council has been asking for is reflected in this budget, as well as just being able to maintain our operations within the rising costs of doing business these days. So much appreciated to all staff who have been making some hard decisions, but thank you. I'm going to gavel out of the budget committee now. Can you hear that? I gavelled out. Sorry. And we'll move on to, now that business related to the budget committee has concluded, I will gavel out as I did and return to our regular council meeting. And in this regular council meeting, we have one big conversation to complete, and that is resolution number 23-5320 for the purpose of adopting solid waste fees at the Metro transfer stations and the regional system fee for fiscal year 2023-24. Councilors, as you recall, we last discussed our solid waste fees at our April 27th meeting. At that meeting, we had an in-depth discussion about the solid waste fees, the system as a whole, and possible scenarios that could be adopted to meet the needs of the region. As we have discussed, after freezing rate increases in 2020 because of the pandemic, which created pressure for a larger increase in 2021, Metro Council's direction last year was to limit annual increases in fees to 8% over the next 5 years to allow for rate predictability and help our local government partners and local businesses plan their businesses and budgets for the future. We understood that this would mean dipping into reserves and limiting or reducing spending because rates would likely not keep up with rising costs. Staff brought us a recommendation that achieved that 8% target on April 27th. Since then, we have heard from a number of stakeholders throughout our process and understand that our decision today impacts the services we provide, the cities in our region, customers, and the businesses that operate within the solid waste system. Today, we have our CFO, Brian Kennedy, here to present the staff portion of this resolution, and then we will have some discussion. And he's back again. He's getting his steps in. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Council President Peterson. I have a short presentation that will be up momentarily. Next slide, please. So a quick reminder on all the work we've done getting to this point. There's been a number of engagement activities. The first 4 bullets on the slide you saw on April 27th, that was engagement that Metro has done, includes a number of budget forums for the Waste Prevention and Environmental Services Department, direct engagement with transfer station operators, including several staff from finance sat down with their financial consultant to go through the details of our fee model and answer their very specific questions. We had Metro Council work session on the fees, and then the additional presentation of the Waste Prevention and Environmental Services budget. Since that time, there was a notification of potential changes to the council's decision to stakeholders. It includes both industry, local government, and elected officials. And then finally, last week, we did a direct engagement with our local government solid waste staff. Next slide, please. As a reminder, the staff recommendation is an overall approximate 8% increase. There are different increases to the mixed solid waste fee and the regional system fee. That would take the total tip fee from $123.45 to $133.81. The overall increase is 8.4%. The reason it's not exactly 8 is there is a small increase in the Metro excise tax. And as a reminder, the council doesn't need to vote on the Metro excise tax. That formula is set in the Metro code and it adjusts automatically at the beginning of each fiscal year. Next slide, please. And then finally, for council consideration, based on direction from the April 27th work session, we've brought back what we previously described as option 3B, which increases the total tip fee approximately 11%. The regional system fee doesn't change in this scenario from the staff recommendation. It's increased to $31.41. But there is a larger increase to the mixed solid waste fee. So rather than increasing to approximately $86 a ton, it would increase to $89.72. And again, the increase is not exactly 11% because of that small increase in the Metro excise tax. We have a substitute Exhibit A to the resolution available should council choose to approve option 3B, which would increase the total tip fee 11.2%. With that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brian. Counselors, any questions for staff at this time? This is our third discussion moment on the actual proposal. And we will be moving into an opportunity for public comment and then moving into actual conversation and potential amendments on the existing resolution after that. Not seeing any hands raised. Thank you so much, Brian. Oh, Councilor Gonzalez, sorry.
Thanks, President Peterson. And again, I know we have conversation or questions before, conversation after, so I'm trying to be mindful about when I ask what questions, and I'm not trying to pontificate on anything. But Brian, over the last few weeks, this has been an issue of council regional concern. I think, first and foremost, I appreciate stakeholders for making time to come in today and, for their testimony, either written or if folks will come to the dais. I, like many of the counselors, have, been on phone calls trying to understand situation, impact to the industry, impact to the system, impact to constituents and all that. One of the things that has really come up in my conversations is, the feeling of how the regional system fee and the tip fee is blended, and how that creates some would say a lack of transparency. And so, I'm wondering, what steps can we take to divide those and really provide more clarity, more transparency to our partners? That's something that I've heard since I've joined the council. And I think, it's just a really prevalent theme. And so, if you have any kind of clarity or any steps that you can take.
Thank you, Councilor Gonzalez. That is a great question. A couple points that I think are important to make before answering your specific question is that when we're setting the mixed solid waste fee and the regional system fee, there is no blending. We very specifically separate out the costs associated with those two activities, and they are kept separate. When certain stakeholders talk about the blending of those fees, they're really talking about reserves, which is we track our reserves essentially in one bucket. Because from our perspective, we operate one solid waste utility. We don't operate a transfer station utility and a regional system fee utility. We operate one solid waste facility. So from you might hear it described as a color of money perspective, the color of money we're tracking is solid waste revenues. And so we're confident in our reporting there. When we generate those reserves, they're primarily used for capital. And so we have capital expenditure obligations for both our transfer station operations and our regional system fee activities. For the regional system fee, we have capital outlay expenditures for the household hazardous waste facility, our RID deployment facility, our Metro Paint facility, and associated kind of mechanical capital like vehicles, for example. So from our perspective, purely from a financial reporting perspective, there's no issue combining those reserves. But we understand the concern, and so we've already made changes for next fiscal year where we're going to separate out our transfer station operations and our regional system fee operations in our accounting system so that we can track specifically how those reserves are generated. We don't think this is a requirement to do. It makes our back-end accounting a little more complicated, but we're happy to do it to demonstrate that transparency. And to be clear, we have, for anyone who's asked questions about our fee setting process, we provide our fee setting model, which is a large, complex spreadsheet, to anyone who asks. Local government, individual members of the community, business owners, we've provided that. We've provided the opportunity to walk through that model in detail. So we're more than happy to be transparent about every single thing that's going on in the solid waste system, and we have done that.
Thanks. Can I ask another question, President Pearson?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, thanks. Another big theme that has come up in my conversations, especially with municipal leaders, a lot of local governments are really reeling from budget impacts. I think folks can testify to that in their own accord, cutting back on programs, cutting back on budgets, et cetera. And so, I've gotten the question from a lot of folks like, can Metro be leaner? And so, or can WPES be leaner? And so, I'm curious. Like how would you respond? I know it's kind of a hard question, but I think it's important to recognize the efficiency and something that we've been discussing a lot about. But for the council and for the audience, what efforts can we take? How lean are we? Can we be leaner? And just encouraging the spirit of being really effective with these resources in the public.
Thank you, Councilor Gonzalez. I would argue that across Metro, having gone through the pandemic, I think the economic and financial impacts in our organization hit earlier than some of our other local government partners. I think they're experiencing kind of a similar level of fiscal distress that we experienced starting in 2020 and on from there. And during that time, all Metro departments, including Waste Prevention and Environmental Services, made a series of reductions, held on filling vacant positions, reimagined programs, and I think those activities made us significantly leaner over the last 3 years, and we're pretty lean at this point. And the increases we're seeing in the budget are related to investments that are consistent with Metro's values. Some of the significant increases in our transfer station operations are related to the Metro Central contract, where we have increased operating costs in order to pay the workers the workers doing that work living wages and benefits comparable to what a Metro employee would receive. Some of our additional investments are about improving worker safety across all of Metro facilities. So I would argue that we're lean and the investments we're making are really consistent with our values. And so if we were to reduce budget, it would require doing less. This isn't an area where we can continue doing the same amount of work with less revenue. So we would have to make some really hard choices about what fewer things we would do in order to reduce our budget.
Thanks. That's enough questions for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Gonzalez. Councilor Lewis.
Sure. Thank you so much. I look forward to the opportunity to, in the future, have a long, deliberate process amongst myself and fellow councilors to really dig in. But what we have in front of us is a combination of a good staff report and some urgency to get this done for this fiscal year. So this is a proposal that is built on the scaffolding of past practices in light of promises or expectations that were set in previous years. My question for you is, does this package include anything that is setting a rate or a practice that will be executed in future years? Essentially, in taking this vote, will I be binding future council to any specific action or expectation?
Councilor Lewis, I do not believe so. I would probably need to think about that a little bit more. I think, clearly the council would not be binding future councils. I think perhaps there's an argument to be made at the staff recommendation. There is, it does require some level of strategic underspending for the Waste Prevention and Environmental Services Department, which we know we have some significant capital expenditures needed at our facilities, and the underspending required in the staff recommendation potentially defers our ability to execute on some of that capital investment, which will continue to be an obligation going forward.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Councilors, any other questions at this time before we move into our public comment on resolution number 23-5320? All right, seeing no hands raised, Connor, will you please describe to the audience our procedures for the public comment?
Yes, thank you, President Peterson. So if anyone wishes to testify on resolution number 23-5320, now is the time to do so. Once again, public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes, and I'll manage a timer to go off at that 3-minute mark. If you have not already signed up to speak, you can do so now. If you're joining us in person, you can fill out one of the blue cards in the back of the room and bring that up to me. If you're joining us on Zoom, you can sign up now by raising your hand. Depending on your version of Zoom, the raise hand button is at the bottom of your screen or within the reactions tab. For those joining virtually today, testifying, I will call your name. You'll see a window pop up asking you to accept that promotion. Once you accept it, you'll rejoin as a panelist where you'll be able to turn on your camera and unmute yourself. As a reminder to everybody testifying today, you do not need to give your physical address. However, please do identify yourself for the record before testifying. So with that, councilors, we do have a couple of folks who have signed up to testify in person. So first up, we have Eben Polk. So Eben, you can come up and you can take a seat at any of the 4 chairs up here. You don't need to mute or unmute the mic. However, feel free to move it closer to yourself. So you'll have 3 minutes and your time will begin when you begin speaking.
Okay, thank you, Council President and councilors. My name is Eben Polk. I am the Solid Waste and Recycling Manager for the City of Portland's Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. Thank you for the opportunity to comment today. I have 4 main points I'd like to make. Firstly, about timing. As you know, the City of Portland, like other cities and counties, sets garbage and recycling collection rates. And I do want to share that it has been a challenge for Portland's rate review process for Metro to conclude its disposal fee setting later than usual. I appreciate that your COO acknowledged this recently. If Metro further delayed its decision on this, it does raise the potential that we would need to adopt 2 rate increases in short order. Second point I wanted to make is about this year's increase. I appreciate Metro's efforts to manage cost increases with the April 25th recommendation for an 8.4% increase, leaving aside the transaction increases. We, like others, are concerned broadly with fees across a range of services that public agencies provide. And our city council is taking a close look at this. This year, Portlanders face a larger than usual rate increase for residential garbage and recycling service, with a number of increased cost inputs, disposal costs among them. If Metro elects the 11.2% increase, that will add another 40 to 55 cents per month for our residential costs on top of the increase that would result from an 8.4% disposal fee increase. Thirdly, the regional system fee and the predictability fee scenario. So, as you know, you previously adopted a fee projection scenario that had assumed some consistent increases in the tip fee and the regional system fee of around 8% annually for several years. And this scenario was framed around predictability. It did not address some concerns that I know some communities have, such as a desire for a more thorough understanding about the drivers of the increased regional system fee. So regardless of your decision today, this framework, I think, deserves further discussion towards the goal that uses of and increases in the regional system fee should be clear, understandable, and driven by consensus priorities that have buy-in from cities and counties, because the regional system fee is about the regional system with multiple agencies working together to provide excellent and critical service. Given the environment we're working in with increasing costs in many areas, it is that much more important to understand the value add from fees like the regional system fee. Predictability does matter more to us, I think, where revenue sharing is concerned. The percentage of RSF revenues shared with local governments to meet state and regional requirements has been in decline and is projected to become a very small percentage of RSF revenues. I think local governments should receive a more predictable and fair share of their RSF on a permanent basis without needing to wait until each spring to find out what revenue share we might see. The lack of predictability makes it difficult for us to plan with certainty for programs and staffing. Local governments are essential partners and also effectively customers of yours in providing what is a critical public health and livability service, and commitments for RSF revenue and design of our process should reflect that. The last point I would like to make, if I may, is that it's important to acknowledge that Metro, as you establish fees for its own transfer stations, private transfer stations do not face evaluation of their fees, and Metro should increase attention to fees being charged by private transfer stations as its own disposal fees climb. Our collection systems require rate setting and cost reporting of our private service providers in exchange for the guaranteed business and margins that they receive. And it doesn't make sense that the disposal system in our region lacks the same parallel accountability in exchange for guaranteed tonnage. So thank you very much for the opportunity to comment today.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have Kristen Leichner. So Kristen, feel free to come up and take any of the 4 seats up here. You'll have 3 minutes, and your time will begin when you begin speaking.
Good morning. Thank you, Council President and Metro Council. First, I just want to say thank you for adding the additional public comment opportunity on this topic so we could speak to it after we heard the staff presentation. I really appreciate that. My name is Kristen Leichner. I'm with Pride Recycling Transfer Company in Sherwood, Oregon. We are a woman-owned and family-operated business in Sherwood, Oregon, and we have been providing transfer services to the Washington County community for the last 30 years. So Pride, along with all the other private transfer station owners in the region, we have been communicating with staff about these topics, and I've shared some of these comments before, but given the 2 proposals before the council currently, I would like to bring forward a few additional comments at this time. So as has been indicated, Metro does blend the reserve funds from RSF and operating costs, and that is a significant concern from my perspective. Regional system fee funds are collected and paid by every facility in the region, including the private facilities, and private facilities do not have access to Metro reserve funds when we're not meeting a cost of service model. If Metro facilities are not charging cost of service and budgeting to dip into reserves, this impacts the private facilities as well. As part of the tonnage allocation goals, private facilities are required to not exceed Metro's tip fee in order to get a portion of our tonnage allocated to us. If Metro is admittedly not meeting their cost of service and intentionally dipping into reserves, which private facilities do not have access to, then you are harming the private facilities like mine by adopting that price structure. Metro regulates our facilities and competes against our facilities, and they are not allowing us to charge full cost of service to receive our full tonnage allocation. With the way the reserves are being blended, it is concerning because it is difficult, if not impossible, for us or the general public to quantify how much the RSF may be supporting Metro's capital and operational activities, or alternatively, how much operational costs may be subsidizing the RSF services. Metro's reserved funds are being used to subsidize operational costs because the current mixed solid waste portion of the tip fee does not cover all operating costs. I think that's been stated pretty clearly. All facilities in the region, private and public, do pay the regional system fees, but only Metro facilities have access to any of these reserve funds. All private facilities have a cap on our wet waste tons we can receive, where Metro has a minimum set amount, resulting in higher tons going to Metro facilities, which allows Metro to build their reserves. Private facilities could not build our reserves in past years where tonnage has come in above the conservative estimate because we were capped at how many tons we could bring into our facilities, so creating an unequal playing field there. So with all of that and with the 2 proposals before you, I would like to advocate for what I believe is being referred to as 3B, which has the 8972 as the operational component, which even at that is admittedly about $2.50 below what staff has presented as a cost of service model. In a perfect world, I would like to see us all charging what the services cost. And inflation has gone up significantly, and I recognize that you all put together a plan for an 8%, and I think our system has changed, so I will leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have Alondo Simpson. And as a reminder to folks on Zoom, if you have not signed up to speak but would like to, go ahead and hit that raise hand button. All right.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Oh, I was just looking for the folks on Zoom. If they wanted to sign up to speak, they can hit that raise hand button. All right. So you'll have 3 minutes, Mr. Simpson, and your time will begin when you begin speaking.
Is it?
Yeah,
Yep.
you're on.
All right. Council President, members of the Metro Council, for the record, my name is Alondo Simpson, CEO and owner of a local benefit corporation referred to as City of Rose Disposal and Recycling, otherwise known as CORE, and our brand evolution to really focus and embrace the circular economy so that we can transition our solid waste system for future generations. I'm not going to be as detailed as Kristen was because she made a lot of great points. I think one for the record that's going to be really important that I highlight is that option 3B. And I think the effort that you are having presented to you by staff in terms of trying to cost recover some of the operational deficiency in terms of costs that have not been accounted for in the current system as it exists today, as well as going forward, I think that's a good step forward. I do want to thank the process that we've engaged in over the past, I don't know, maybe month or so, and the past couple of weeks as well with the meetings and the conversations. They've been really fruitful. I think there's definitely a lot of work that has to be done. I am adamant that we are going to have to be able to be very transparent in this evolution of this system, because we've been so dependent on a model that worked before. But I think the pandemic obviously created transitions in our society, and one of those is costs and the cost of money and the impacts that those are having on people in everyday lives. And so to me personally, I really am going to be adamant about you all as elected leaders and leaders of this agency to hold your staff accountable. I understand those are very complicated things to do at times, especially when you're dealing with really big agencies. I've sat in, not in an elected position, but in an appointed position before for a very large agency, and I understand the complexities that come along with that. But I also understand that being a leader is not easy. And sometimes pushing back is necessary in order for us to evolve. Because if we do not, then we maintain status quo. And status quo is detrimental to the 21st century, and it's detrimental to us, and it's most importantly detrimental to future generations. And so I just wanted to make sure that you guys understood that we've gotten to this point, and there's still a lot more work that has to be done. And I am committed to working alongside you all, and more importantly, your staff and other stakeholders within this region to make sure that we are creating the transformative solid waste and recycling and innovation ecosystem of the 21st century that not only leads our country, but leads our planet. And CORE, as well as our other constituents in the solid waste system, are going to be here and adamant about making sure that we make that possible, and it's a true reality. So I appreciate the time today.
Yeah, thanks, Alonda.
Thank you. So with that, that is everybody that I have that has signed up in advance. I will just pause for another couple of seconds here to look for any hands, either in Zoom or in our physical audience. And I do not see any other hands going up. President Peterson.
Thank you. Before we move on, I'd like to just bring up Brian Kennedy for his steps again, to be able to give us just a little bit more information. Thanks, Brian. On what our predicted rate increase would be on the residential customer. We just heard a number from the city of Portland, and I just wanted to clarify our portion of what we predict.
Thank you, Council President Peterson. For option 3B at the 11% increase, our estimate is that would be an average impact around the region of around $9.60 or around 80 cents a month. It's really important to note that this is an estimate because Metro essentially operates as a wholesaler in this market, and it's really difficult to predict the specific incidence of our fees because solid waste rates for residential and commercial customers are set by local governments, and not all governments do it the same way. Some, like City of Portland, set their fees every year. Some set fees for multiple years at a time. Some are forward-looking, some are backward-looking. So we try to make an estimate, and our current estimate for 3B is around 80 cents per month or $9.60 for the year.
However, Brian, my understanding is that the difference between the 8% and the 11% is 20 cents. You're giving me the full, and I agree with you, but the difference between 8 and 11 is 20 cents, correct? Okay, thank you for that clarification. So the full rate that you just mentioned was on the 11%, but it's a 20-cent increase from the original proposed 8%.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Melissa, did you have anything else to add to that?
You read my mind, President Peterson. I was going to point that out, that the figures that Brian referenced are changed from today and not the difference between option 3 and 3B. The difference between option 3 and 3B we estimate to be about 20 cents a month.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated for the clarification. And thank you, Brian, again, for coming back up. With that, I think I closed, but I'll make sure I close public comment on resolution number 23-5320 and move us on to deliberation. Council, I think we have all acknowledged that considering new direction may be an appropriate course of action to address business needs and support the success of our regional system. And it is my understanding that Councilor Wong would like to propose an amendment. Councilor, would you like to go ahead and introduce
Of course, thank you, Madam President. Well, first, I just want to acknowledge the challenging cost environment for everyone, from consumers to our transport stations to haulers. However, I do want to begin to move us towards a true cost of service. You know, I see that a true cost of service is nearly 15%, and I don't believe it's strong public policy to continue to dip into our reserves year after year. I would like to also acknowledge that the timeline that we were on was not ideal. It does not reflect our values and community engagement, but, you know, this has been a unique time with cost increases, and we wanted to carefully consider kind of the implications all across the system and to the consumer. So I hope we can spend time in the coming year working with our partners to rethink how we pay for the system as a whole. You know, I think if we're serious about getting less waste into landfills, we really need to be thinking about, you know, how the circular economy works and how we pay for that. But for this year, I would move to amend Exhibit A attached to resolution number 23-5320 to change the mixed solid waste fee in the section entitled tonnage fees by waste class from 8623 to 8972. And that reflects the changes that were listed as 3B.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselors, there's been a motion to amend Exhibit A attached to resolution number 23-5320 to increase the mixed solid waste fee to $89.72. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Counselor Wong and seconded by Counselor Simpson. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Counselors. Counselor Rosenthal, and then Counselor Nolan.
Yeah, just to clarify, that is an increase from 14% to, what is the percent increase? And does staff have any idea what that would do to the local fee? We had a 20% increase from the original 3 to 3B. Would this be 5 cents or something like that? Do we have that idea?
Councilor Rosenthal, the numbers I just mentioned were specifically related to this option. So increasing from the staff recommendation to option 3B, we expect on average would result in about a 20% or 20-cent increase per month for the average residential customer.
But this is an increase above 3B, correct? No?
No, this is 3B.
This is the increase from 8% to 11%, which would be an increase of 20 cents from the 8% on a residential bill.
Then I'm misunderstanding, because I thought that you were the amendment was to raise it from 8623, which is in the resolution, to 8972.
Which was option 3.
Correct.
Yes.
And that 8972 is the number in option 3B. So the existing resolution before you, the staff recommendation is at the 8%.
So this isn't, all right.
Okay, Counselor Nolan.
Thank you, Madam President. I usually follow numbers pretty well, but I'm unclear about this now. If I might ask Mr. Kennedy, what would be the consolidated increase in total fees if this amendment is adopted?
The increase in the total tip fee at the Metro Transfer Station would be $13.85. And that is inclusive of the mixed solid waste fee, the regional system fee, and the Metro excise tax.
And that equates as a percent to what?
11.2%.
Thanks. If I might make a comment then in response to that information, Madam President. First of all, the staff has been very accessible to me personally, to get information, I understand, to the stakeholders in this as well. And I appreciate that. I have also appreciated, Madam President, the leadership you are expressing in focusing in the next 6 months or so, I would imagine, on really digging into what our vision and policy around rate structure for WPES and the services that support our vision should be. And I hope that we put our shoulders into that effort together with the council and the staff as well as community leaders. I'm looking forward to that. But I'm voting today on an amendment and then presumably on an underlying resolution. And while I appreciate the challenge in making adjustments that square our values and our commitments with a need to have an immediate answer, I am having a hard time with the effect that this amendment has on our very recent commitment to our stakeholders of capping our increases at 8%. And I have discussed in this group a way I think we could get there with moving aggressively or assertively toward cost of service models for our own fee, and that is to hold the regional system fee steady, freeze it, or have nominal increases and not 6.9%. I admit that I haven't persuaded a majority of our colleagues here on this side of the dais, but I think breaking our recent promise to maintain our increases at or below 8% a year means that I can't support this amendment. But that doesn't mean that I am not interested in helping efforts to rationalize and clarify our policies and implementations in the future.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Gonzalez.
Yeah, thanks, President Peterson. There's a lot going through my mind, and I'm much greener on this than folks since, I missed the April conversation. And, things have moved pretty quickly as some have mentioned. I'm feeling an inherent, tension with, the, remarks that Councilor Nolan made in terms of, a commitment that we made. And also recognizing how important it is to have a cost of service. And so I just kind of want to break down my thought process here. I think, one of the values that I see and the benefits of the region that we have is that we have a healthy, diversity of industry players that are small, medium, large, that offer different kinds of services, but ultimately that offers opportunities for people. My worry is that if we're not able to operate at cost of service, that we create a lane for consolidation for the larger companies to just continue to absorb the medium and the smaller size ones. And that's a real fear that I have because, I value the local employers, the local businesses, and the value that they bring, the vision, the community investment. And so that's something that's really important to me that really hasn't risen from the conversations that we've had. And I was one of the counselors also a few months ago, a year ago maybe, that talked about rate stabilization and the commitment that we made there in terms of the forecasting. And I know we made that commitment, and at the same time, things change. This inflationary environment has been very intense. In 2019 we made a lot of commitments of things we wanted to do, and the pandemic hit, and we had to change those commitments. We couldn't keep the commitments of the things that we wanted to do, and we had to change. So I guess essentially, under the umbrella of that kind of conversation, I think it's just really, challenging moment to be in, and, having spoken with, a lot of different folks about the proper way to move forward. And so I think, I appreciate Councilor Wong for bringing the amendment, and, for the sake of further conversation, we'll be supporting it so that we can continue our conversation. There is three things, though, that I really want to get across to our staff and to our stakeholders, especially. And there's three things that I think that this process has brought us to. One is communication. I think from the phone calls, from the meetings, people don't feel communicated to, and people don't feel like Metro is doing enough. I know that we can, roll out the PowerPoint. We've had this conversation, this briefing, our COO has sent this out, and, that's good, but we needed to do more, especially for decisions like this. And I feel, that we could have probably done more with some of these big changes that we have. Second is transparency, and, Brian, I appreciate the point that you brought up, and the work that you're doing in your office to do that. But still, I think there's still a lot of questions that people have about, how Metro operates and how Metro uses its capital funds, et cetera, its reserves. And, I think that for this agency to continue to maintain its credibility into the future, transparency is very important. And lastly, I think people are really asking us to, with this new phase, with this kind of, phase of that we're experiencing from the pandemic, post-pandemic, I guess, is really communicating a vision of our system given the changing variables that we have. And so, I'm hoping that as a council we can do that. And, I guess I've been talking for a while, so I apologize. But, this is really challenging. And, I'll end by saying that, there will always be an inherent tension in rate setting between, our municipal partners, our industry partners, and of course, Metro's programs and operations. But I will say that I do stand by wholeheartedly and fully the decisions that this council has made to, one, improve the wage conditions and the benefits that we're able to offer our employees in our facilities, to nearly double our RID program, to improve and enhance the services at Metro Paint. I mean, you name it, right? Like, there are some very incredible things that our staff is working on that I think have merit, value, and public benefit that, people might question on a balance sheet, but are true value. So again, done pontificating, and I'll cede for now, but thank you, President Peterson and Council, for entertaining me, and look forward to some good discussion.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilors, any other remarks at this point? Councilor Simpson.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Brian, for your presentation. Thank you to the haulers and the stakeholders who came out and spoke with us and gave us a little insight. As I think about this, I really think about the little guy. And for me, I think the little guy is our local haulers, our family businesses. We heard folks come out and speak about those issues. But more so, I think about, again, bringing up the issues of inflation, cost of labor, cost of fuel. And quite frankly, as a veteran and former service member, I get really scared when I hear about a looming budget, Congress not getting the budget passed or whatnot. So as a service member, when you fear your paycheck isn't gonna be there, I think about how that impacts us here on a local level. But more so, with this regional systems fee, if we were to freeze it, to Councilor Nolan's position, what would that impact have on the agency? Because I know that, we are gonna have a longer conversation with our stakeholders as we move forward. And to Councilor Gonzalez's point, have clear communication and transparency. But what does that do if we freeze and go at 11%?
Councilor Simpson, Freezing the regional system fee at the current rate of $29.37 would require budget reductions in WPES of $2 million-ish, potentially more, depending on our tonnage forecast. Actually, sorry, $3 million. It's a decrease of about $2 a ton, and we expect to get about 1.5 million tons in the region. So 1.5 million tons times $2 a ton is about $3 million. So we would require, in order to not deplete our reserves below our policy levels, they would need to reduce their budget. So that would be actual budget reductions and reductions in services and programs.
Thank you.
Councilor Lewis.
Sure, thank you so much. Really excellent discussion today. And I first want to start by thanking the staff. Metro staff has gone above and beyond in terms of being patient with council, but also being out and in community, not only with the stakeholders that we've brought to the table to really talk about their experience with curbside or with using a transfer station, but they've also met with municipalities, our jurisdictional partners, haulers, and other members of the waste station community. I look forward to continued effort to make sure that we are out talking about what we do, the services we provide, and as a public agency being fully transparent. I come to this remembering 4 years ago where we were embarking on a study around rate setting and transparency, and we hit some dead ends. We didn't know everything that was going on in essentially what is a black box of parts of the industry. And it means something really different to be a big international company versus a small local that's innovating and evolving. And I want to continue those conversations. I look forward to figuring out how it is that we continue to provide the services we've come to rely on. 4 years ago, not everybody knew what RID was. Now I think most people actually understand that there's a crew that goes out and cleans up sites because we've made such measurable impact in the past 3 years. What other programs are hidden from public eye and scrutiny right now that if they were to go away or if the world were to suddenly change in any other way, people would come to light and say, yes, that is essential. So I come into this conversation today willing to vote only because I know that this is 1 year and that we will be looking comprehensively at our program as council so that we're not in the same position in a year. I think our programs, we've been a little bit of everything to everyone. We're at once an operator and a regulator, and I'm okay with that. It's a healthy tension, but it does mean that we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard, and I want to make sure that we're doing that through our rate setting process in future years. Thank you, colleagues, for a good discussion today, acknowledging that this is in some ways an imperfect compromise, but it is a way forward that acknowledges the times that we're in, and they're unknown and unpredictable. And when we're setting rates for a year ahead that we cannot forecast fully, I think this is where we need to be.
Thank you, Councilor. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and weigh in here. Well, it has been my preference to support the original staff recommendation, particularly because I have extreme, and I say extreme discomfort with making a shift this late. I will be supporting this amendment. Councilors, you all know I've served at the local level as a city councilor, as a county commissioner, as chair of the county. And, you know, from that perspective, it's challenging to be a partner when your partner moves too quickly in a different direction, and for all the right reasons. And that's why it's a difficult decision for me. Because while I understand technically in my head, 8 to 11%, not an extreme change, but however, it's a last minute change. And while we can't be, you know, stuck in concrete, I think the issues that have come out through this process are real and they need to be brought to the fore. And I appreciate the councilors pushing to bring those to the fore. This waste management system has been difficult to understand and get your arms around, whether you've been here for 6 months or 4.5 years. And I think we're all getting to the point where we're starting to understand the benefits that we provide, but all the costs to society of how the system needs to be morphed and moved. You know, as we have talked, counselors, I voluntold some of you to please talk to mayors, and you readily did so. And I don't know if that was the right way to get our communications done, but I think we all learned something in those conversations with the mayors and chairs, that while they're not satisfied, I mean, whether they're not happy with this, but I think they're understanding, and it's a workable compromise, not to go to full cost recovery, but to slowly increase towards full cost recovery, whatever that may mean to us in the future. So while this change is responsive to the concerns we've heard from businesses that operate within the solid waste system, particularly smaller businesses who are challenged to keep up with the rising costs when the rates are kept low, I just want to remind us that, again, that we could have gone to a 15% increase. So this is a compromise, balancing those needs to make it affordable, but also provide the services. I also want to point out that we are not at a point in such a quick turnaround to be able to delve into every aspect of the waste management system issue. And there are a lot of issues we're going to have to weigh over the next year to 2 years. We're going to be able to get only so much done in 6 months, and that might just be short term. But every time you pull on a strand, and I think every time we've had a conversation with our staff, every time you pull on one of the threads within the system, the ecosystem, it starts to unravel a whole lot of other things. And so I think while we might be able to make some significant strides over the next 6 months, right now, I am not willing to make cuts to Metro Paint, to the regional illegal dump program that we have been actually trying to grow to deal with the issues in the region, but not just to grow it to meet the needs, but also to make it a workforce development program, something that we've put a lot of emphasis on as a council. There may be different ways to pay for these things in the future, but we don't have time now, based on what we've already heard from the city of Portland and other cities on their deadlines to be able to do their contracts and their budgets. So while I appreciate all of the thoughtful deliberation, and I really do appreciate staff and all the work we've done to get to this point, I, again, will support the resolution, which I understand to be a workable compromise. Knowing that we will continue to face the pressure to increase rates in the future, we have a lot of work ahead to evaluate we have and ensure the outcomes we want to achieve are supported by all parts of the system, including our rates. We also have, as Councilor Gonzalez mentioned, we just have some real work to do in terms of communication. And I just want to stress that what transparency means to me, I appreciate that we share information, but the information is in a spreadsheet that someone has to know a lot about the system to be able to understand. And that doesn't mean we're actually communicating to everyone or even to the council to be able to understand, again, how these threads and these assumptions that we make start to pull apart or get us to where we need to go. So I guess what I just want to end on is my commitment to working with you, council, our colleagues in the cities and counties, as well as the industry representatives, to chart a new path for this work by creating a committee to start as soon as we possibly can after the budget is approved, to define the outcomes we want as a society related to garbage and recycling, and determining the role of metro cities and counties in the industry to ensure that we are meeting those outcomes. Because all of us need to be more transparent about the outcomes and how we're getting to them and the impact that has. So due to the rising costs, the goal of a smaller waste stream, and being able to meet environmental and societal needs, we are all going to be needing to row in the same direction. Our current system is not as collaborative as we need to be to practically meet the multitudes of goals through the different hats that Metro currently has in the system. We will need to disentangle these roles and make new assumptions about how we can meet those needs more effectively and cost efficiently. With that, if no councilor has any more to add, I'm going to call on Connor to call the roll.
Madam President, to clarify, this is on the amendment.
Correct.
Thanks.
All right. Councilor Simpson.
Aye.
Counselor Nolan,
No.
Counselor Wong,
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal,
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez,
Aye.
Counselor Lewis,
Aye.
and President Peterson.
Aye. The motion passes. Thank you. All right, now we will vote to approve resolution number 23-5320 for the purpose of adopting solid waste fees at the Metro transfer stations and the regional system fee for fiscal year 2023-24 as amended. Do I have a motion?
Counselor Gonzalez, move approval.
Thank you.
Counselor Rosenthal seconds.
Thank you. Counselor Gonzalez moves and Counselor Rosenthal seconds. It just feels like we've done this before.
We have.
Any further to say? It's a trend of the day. And is there any further discussion on the motion as amended? All right.
Madam
Seeing none.
President,
Yeah. I'm sorry.
further discussion.
Go ahead.
Thanks. To the overall measure, it does meet my objective of, well, it doesn't, because a cap is a cap, and 8.4%, however it comes, is not 8%. We have trivialized a little bit conversations about 20 cents here and 50 cents there. And I don't think any of the people party to that conversation struggle to put food on the table for their kids. So I will not participate in trivializing the impact on our consumers. But I'd also like to point out that we've talked a lot about communication. And it's critical in my book that we talk about and focus on communication that is more than just giving people information to convince them to take our point of view. It is listening to the experts. We had here today local business owners who we want to or claim we want to support. We had a woman business owner and a Black man owning a business in this field. They brought their expertise to us, not just at today's hearing, but throughout the discussion. And I hope that as we look to reviewing the entire system, that their voices and not just their ears are part of the conversation. Thanks.
Counselor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to, sort of my spin on things overall is, I think we're moving much more strongly toward a cost of service on the mixed solid waste fee, which I think is a good idea. I think that we would have liked to have kept a flat fee for the regional systems fee, but we also recognize that costs have gone up, and so it's less than 8%. I think that's not a bad thing. And we've also made a commitment to trying to keep things stable and to also maintaining some of the services that we find that have been very helpful in the region in terms of both reducing waste load as well as dealing with special hazardous waste. We still have more work to do in this regard. So that's those are the reasons that I see, and that the reason I would support the resolution.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Thanks, President Peterson. I think one of the things that I would like to see from either staff or council action is putting together either a task force or a committee that can come together to talk about this a little bit more.
Yes, Counselor Gonzalez, I already announced that in my remarks. I'm sorry if it wasn't clear. Yes.
All right, great. Sorry about that. Thank you. I'll leave it at that then.
Thank you. 100%. That is where we are headed. This is going to take a village to make sure that we achieve all of the societal outcomes while making sure we think about how we charge and what we charge in each of the different fees and who participates in that, where it sits. I mean, there's a lot here, and I am so grateful that the council wants to start disentangling these threads, as I said, because we have set up certain expectations with the 2030 waste management plan. We have certain expectations based on prior conversations about rate setting, and I think we need to get clear with the region and ourselves about what we're trying to achieve. So, thank you. With that, any further discussions before I ask Connor to call the roll? Seeing no hands raised, Connor, will you please call the roll for the approval of resolution number 23-5320 as amended?
Yes, thank you. Counselor Wong.
Aye.
Counselor Simpson.
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal.
Aye.
Counselor Nolan.
No.
Counselor Lewis.
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Aye.
And President Peterson.
Aye, the motion passes. Thank you. I just want to take a moment and heartily thank staff and all of our partners who have come forward, whether from industry or cities and counties. I think that what we have heard is coming out of COVID and lockdown is hard, and the economics around this are hard. And the level of conversation is new into this topic for the council and the region trying to really weigh in. And I just want to say thank you for everybody's patience, for the hard work in trying to answer all the questions, and just doing, the best work that we could possibly hope for to be able to get to this point. So thank you, Marisa. Again, Brian, thank you for your teams and all their hard work. All right, why don't we move to our Chief Operating Officer communication?
Thank you, Council President Peterson. I just want to make sure we don't have one more item. Perhaps we did that already. Oh, I think I'm looking at the wrong date. Pardon me. Okay. Just a couple updates for you today. As the weather starts to turn summery, this is your first reminder of the season to keep an eye out for heat-related illnesses this weekend. We're not quite used to this warm weather yet, and we are going to see temperatures soar into the 90s this weekend. It's extremely important to keep an eye on both yourself and those around you for signs of illness. And also, I would encourage you to refresh your knowledge of Metro's heat illness prevention policy. This policy outlines all the measures that Metro work sites need to implement to help prevent illness at work. And these include providing access to shade and water, adjustments to workload and schedules, and emergency notification procedures. We'll be leaning increasingly on this policy as the weather heats up, so it's a good opportunity to take a look. The second item is something that I'm personally extremely excited about. For the past couple of summers, Metro Parks and Nature has invested in paid media outreach to remind people about water safety and the importance of wearing life jackets in open water. As you know, we govern quite a few and steward quite a few properties that are popular swimming holes. Last year, Parks and Nature Communications expanded that outreach to include Spanish language radio ads and school-based advertising. This summer, they're expanding even further with sponsorship agreements with the Portland Timbers and the Hillsboro Hops. The Hops sponsorship includes signage at the ballpark and PA announcements at games. Metro will also be tabling at some games, including Soñadores games, which are focused on the Spanish-speaking community. Our tabling staff will be handing out free life jackets in adult and child sizes and providing information on water safety. The Timbers sponsorship includes water safety messaging on the Timbers website and 30-second ads on radio broadcasts of games. This is all targeted at the communities that we know are most impacted by a lack of water safety. And so I am just really thankful to staff for being creative and thinking outside the box. Parks and Nature will also be sharing the spotlight with other Metro initiatives, primarily in WPEZ, and they'll be messaging about Ask Metro, Recycle or Not at both Hops and Timbers games, and WPEZ staff will be tabling as well. Final dates for those events are still being hammered out, but we're looking forward to spending some time out in the community and helping spread the word about some of the important work that Metro is doing. That's all I have for you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilors, any communication? Councilor Gonzalez.
Okay, yeah, really briefly, this one's a little bit fun. So I can only speak to my own lived experience, which is in Mexico and potentially other countries in Central and South America, May 10th is Dia de las Madres, which is Mother's Day. And so I want to wish everyone a Feliz Dia de las Madres, just important to do that. And, if you're my mom, you get 2 Mother's Days, so it's kind of great in that way. But in light of, some of the heavy topics that we talked about today, just wanted to remind everyone to, love your moms, love the moms in your life, and just a huge appreciation. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you. Anybody else? All right, I just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge one of our wonderful transportation staff, our Metro Deputy Director of Planning, Research, and Development, Margie Bradway. It's her last council meeting. Oh, there she is on camera. Hey. Before she starts her new role as the Director of Community Services for Multnomah County, I just wanted to say thank you, Margie. We're so excited for your opportunity to start your work over with Multnomah County and take all of your experience and knowledge over to help them with a variety of different departments that you'll be overseeing, more than just transportation. But I just want to say, Margie, it's been a pleasure and an honor to work with you for the last 5 years, 5.5. Your dedication to professionalism, your ethical standards, and your desire to make sure that we raise all boats in this region, both from stem to stern, from the Columbia down to Wilsonville, from Forest Grove all the way up to Gresham, but also in those communities that we have disinvested in for so long, our low-income and BIPOC communities. Your dedication to making sure that that is no longer the case, that Metro is on the right track, and we're listening to everybody's needs. Just thank you for everything you've done, all of the advice and help that you've given me personally, as well as this council and our staff, and we will miss you. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add, but okay. Yes, Councilor Lewis.
Sure, I want to just say a big thank you for everything, Margie. Personally coming in to this office, excited to represent District 2 in the transportation respect without realizing what a workload that would be. You were a thought partner from early on, and the opportunity to work with you personally, I've grown a lot. I also want to recognize the mark you've left on this agency, in particular, your organization of our JPAC work, not only meeting individually with JPAC counselors, but helping to structure our preparation, our post JPAC meetings so that no thread gets lost, and really making sure that we as an MPO are working seamlessly with our regional partners. That's the only way we've been competitive at the federal level. And you've really put a focus on making sure that we are not only competitive for our own sake and our own merits, but that our jurisdictional partners have really been brought along through the lens of our values of equity and mobility, and through our climate lens as well. So I know you're not going far. From what I read in the news, your new job is bigger than maybe you thought it was, and there's nobody more up to the task than you. So I look forward to seeing what you do there. Multnomah County needs you. Your leadership is definitely not leaving the region, so thank you. And I look forward to hopefully being a friend and not just a colleague.
Councilor Gonzalez and then Wong.
Thanks, President Peterson. The waterworks are going to start here. I just want to thank you, Margie. I attribute probably 85.4% of everything I know in transportation to you, and to your mentorship and your friendship, being a teacher, being available. I just am so grateful for you, and it's I know you're spreading your wings to fly, and I think I feel like, oh my gosh, you're leaving now. It's, time for me to spread my wings. And I'm sure others feel that way as well, right? In terms of that. And so I'm just so grateful for all the work that we've done together. Like just some great memories when we were in Vancouver, BC, riding ferries and like just doing like for Railvolution, and how formative of an experience that's been for me as a transportation leader at Metro. So I know you're just probably going down the street a few blocks or wherever your office is going to be. I don't know, but just it's going to be really hard to not have you here. But thank you for your legacy. And before I forget, I do also want to update folks that we did have a JPACT and council work session this morning, which I probably should have updated everyone on. That was excellent. And everyone gave Margie a round of applause for her service there, and just some really good discussion on the RTP, I think, teeing us up for the future. And so just thank you, Margie, and just thank you. Muchas gracias.
Councillor Wong.
Oh, great. Thank you, Madam President, and just want to echo all the sentiments that my colleagues are bringing forth. I think I have the distinct honor to work with you when you were still at the City of Portland Bureau of Transportation, and I know we had so many conversations about what it means to build safe and complete streets, especially out in East Portland. So I know you have many of your mentees here in this room, and I just want to highlight kind of like your technical know-how, but also your commitment to capacity building and building a movement of new thought leaders in transportation. So that impact is not lost, and I think that legacy will continue. Hopefully here at Metro and throughout the region. So I want to thank you for your commitment and your leadership, and we're going to miss you here, but we really look forward to working with you at the county.
Thank you, Councillor. We don't see Councillor Rosenthal on Zoom, but I think he raised his hand, so I will call on him.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say we'll miss you, Margie. I just hope that they can take all your process, institutional, and technical transportation knowledge and download it into a droid so that we have it available, because I think we're going to need it. So thank you.
Margie.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Margie, and we will see you in short order for a nice send-off party. So thank you, everybody, for everything today. Making hard decisions is a skill that I think this council has in order to work together to move an agenda along, and I just want to say thank you. It is an honor to serve with all of you, and it is an honor to have staff that help us make these tough decisions. And so with that, seeing no further discussion, just thank you. The council meeting is adjourned. Our next regular meeting is scheduled for May 16th.
Recording
at
stopped.
10:30 a.m.